Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 42. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be going over a Minior team. Now Minior uses a classic strategy here, a tale as old as time, of clicking your Shell Smash and then negating the defense drops from the Shell Smash with your White Herb, and everything on this team is sort of set up to help Minior really excel and counter the Pokemon that Minior is weak to, so that Minior can have a pretty nice place in this format, I would say, inside of closed team sheets. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about Minior. Minior is a very special Pokemon because it gets the ability Shields Down, which means that whenever your HP goes down from half, you will change form into a different form that changes your stats so that you hit harder, but you have less defenses, I believe. And that's useful because on the first turn with Minior, we can click our Shell Smash, which will allow us to get 2 boosts of attack, special attack, and speed, but we only really use the attack and the speed. And usually the downside of clicking Shell Smash is that it will also lower your defense and special defense to make it so that you take more damage, and especially since we are a faster Pokemon, those defense drops are pretty important because we could just end up taking 2 attacks and getting knocked out. However, with the White Herb, it will give us a one-time shot to get rid of our negative stat changes, so it will negate the defense and special defense drop from the Shell Smash, and since we no longer have an item, we will be getting Stab Acrobatics on Minior, which will make it 110 base power once we get rid of our item, which is great. And we also have the Rock Slide for really good stab spread damage into both of our foes, and since we're super fast, it's pretty likely that we'll add some variance into games where anything that doesn't live the Rock Slide is a pretty good chance to get flinched by it. And we have the Protect just to save ourselves for a turn in case we need to use one of our other Pokemon in order to help out Minior getting to its full Shell Smash state, and we're Terra Ghost, so just so that we're not getting faked out. But ideally what happens is we get the Shell Smash off while we have our defensive form up, and then the opponent procs our health to go just low enough under half that will activate our Shields Down to be our much faster offensive form. Next down we got Amoonguss, and Amoonguss is your go-to redirection Pokemon, and we're just doing pretty basic things with Amoonguss here, as we've got the Spore, we've got the Rage Powder, we've got the Pollen Puff, in order to maybe help heal Minior, and we have the Clear Smog to get rid of opponent's stat boost, or stat drops on ourselves are also possible to get rid of, but really not too preferred in a lot of scenarios, except for maybe with Hariyama. But Clear Smog is just always good for being a nice Dozo counter, and I just decided to go Terra Grass on this Amoonguss, which is nothing special, but you probably should go with a different defensive type on your Amoonguss if I'm being honest. But you know, actually, we're just going to change the defensive type to Water, because I don't think I actually bothered changing his Terra type from Grass, so we're going to be Water. It never comes up really, so you really should be terastallizing something offensive like Minior or Hariyama, but Water's probably a little bit better, so we're just going to leave it at Water, and we're Citrus Berry, so that whenever we get knocked below half health, we'll get a quarter of our health back. Next up, we got Hariyama, who we have featured before, and Hariyama is going to be doing classic Flame Orb Guts things, where we burn ourselves after a turn, and then once our Guts is activated, we get a free 1.5 times boost while being burned, and that Fake Out can usually guarantee that we get that one turn in order to get the burn, but it also helps guarantee Minior will get to attack for at least one turn, and we have 2 very heavy damage moves in the close combat, which is Stab, but will also lower our defense and special defense, and we have the Headlong Rush, which has as much base power but is not Stab, but the ground typing is very nice to have for offensives. And we have Clear Smog on Amoonguss, so we can get rid of those defense drops if we really need to. And we have the Wide Guard on Hariyama in order to make it so that Minior is not getting hit by spread attacks, very crucially, as the opponent could just go for 2 spread attacks on turn 1, and there's not really much that we can do about it, unless we have Hariyama on the field who can click Wide Guard and negate those attacks. Next up, we got a Oranguru, and Oranguru is here to pressure Trick Room, as the opponent could just lead 2 fast Pokemon in order to outspeed Minior and get rid of it, but us leading a Oranguru and maybe Hariyama more guarantees a Trick Room mode with some of the slower Pokemon on the team. And for our Trick Room mode, we have the Bulldoze option, which will lower the speed of everything, but we also have two Pokemon who are not grounded, so we could just go for the Bulldoze while we have Minior or Rotom on the field, and then get a speed drop into our opponent's Pokemon so that Minior is even more guaranteed to outspeed them on the next turn. As well as we have the knockoff for getting rid of opponent items, and we have the taunt just in case we need to taunt something for whatever reason. And on our Oranguru, we have the Symbiosis ability this time, so whenever a Pokemon uses up an item, Oranguru will take its item and it will give it to our side Pokemon, which is very useful because Minior has the White Orb, Amoonguss has the Citrus Berry, Gastrodon has the Agua Berry, and Rotom's Choice Scarf, so Rotom doesn't count, but half the team Oranguru can give its Covert Cloak to, and if we give the Covert Cloak to Minior, it means that we don't have to worry about fake outs on Minior, or like Icy Wind speed drops, for example. So it's nice to have that option where Oranguru can use the Covert Cloak at the start, and then the Pokemon that's next to Oranguru can take advantage of the Covert Cloak once they use up their item. However, it is worth noting that if you're trying to go for acrobatics on Minior, it's not super beneficial to Symbiosis the Covert Cloak, but it does come up in some scenarios. Next up we got Gastrodon, and Gastrodon is pretty classic because of its Storm Drain ability that allows it to negate all single target water type moves on the field and draw them into it in order to get a special attack buff. And since Minior is weak to water, it's good to be redirecting those water type moves, or at least have the ability for the opponent to have to think around us switching in Gastrodon at any time. Gastrodon is pretty simple defense set, as we just have the Earth Power for dealing good ground type stab damage, and we have Muddy Water for dealing good water stab damage and perhaps getting an accuracy drop to add some variance to the game. And we also have the option to go for the Yawn, which will put the opponent to sleep after one turn, so if we can create an opening where Gastrodon can put the opponent to sleep and then have Minior take them out, or vice versa, then that will be good to use Gastrodon. We're going with Poison on Gastrodon because we resist grass mostly. And lastly, we have the Rotom Mow, and the Rotom Mow can get rid of a lot of threats for Minior, such as the opposing water types, but also can help deal with most of the electric types because we can still do good stab damage into them with the Leaf Storm option. But we also have the Volt Switch, which allows us to pivot out, and we can do something like read Rotom Oranguru, and we can Volt Switch out with the Rotom and then get Hariyama inside of Trick Room pretty safely in order to get that Guts Burn. But we also have some disruption tools on Rotom in the Will-O-Wisp for decreasing the physical base power of the opponent's moves, and we have the Trick, as we can use it to brick Pokemon that are more defense orientated. We can take their item and give them a Choice Scarf, so they are forced to not only be faster, perhaps under Trick Room, but if they clicked a move like Fake Out or another move like that they don't want to click again, we can force them to click it again using the Choice Scarf if they have moved after they have received the Choice Scarf. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Okay, so here we have a team that is not really subtle at all, as they're just Mouseape and double Rain just to make sure they're getting up that Rain with their Archaludon and their Basculegion on the field. So we decided to start the battle, and I decided to lead Rotom and Minior, and they decided to lead Maushold and Pelipper, which I think is a little unexpected at this point, because I was kind of expecting that they would either do Mouseape or they would do a Rain and Archaludon. But I'm more than willing to swap out Gastrodon here if they think that they can go for a water type move. But they just decide to immediately swap into Annihilate for that side beat up, but I'm fine with that, as I allow Minior in order to get off its Shell Smash here, and we're going to see Basculegion swap out from Maushold, so they're no longer Friend Guard, and they can no longer redirect the Acrobatics on Minior, as we just get a little bit of Muddy Water damage into both targets, and they try to Wave Crash, but Gastrodon is Storm Drain, so that's not going to be how that works, as we get the Acrobatics into Annihilate in order to take it out, and then single target Muddy Water damage is going to do pretty clean damage into Basculegion, and the opponent just forfeits at this point. Next up, we have a pretty interesting side terrain team, as they can just spam things like the Delphox, and they have the Mouseape again, which Mouseape is kind of hard to overcome on this team if we don't position correctly, but they decide to lead Sneasler and Indeedee, which I'm pretty okay with at this point. They just full on Throat Chop into Oranguru, which does a lot of damage. We can Volt Switch into Sneasler and then get in Hariyama, as I went for the Trick Room here. But the Indeedee is actually imprisoned Trick Room, which is immediately going to hard stop our plans. I decided to swap in Rotom here, and I go for the Wide Guard. We catch a Throat Chop into Rotom, and they do Expanding Force, which is good that Hariyama has the Wide Guard here. They decide to swap in Annihilate for Indeedee for whatever reason, and they just Dire Claw with Rotom, getting rid of it. But now that Indeedee's no longer on the field, we can bring in a Amoonguss to maybe do a little bit more stuff.
as Dire Claw comes out and Rage Fist comes out, but that's not doing any damage into Amoonguss. And luckily we get to pick off Sneasler here, which is at least a good start, and we get to put Annihilate to sleep with the Spore, as Indeedee is going to return to the field, and then Swamp Mousehold in, as Indeedee gets the Terra Fighting and goes for the Terra Blast, however Poison Resist Fighting, and we get to put Indeedee pretty much to sleep here for free, which is nice. We're going to Rage Powder so that the Mousehold takes out the Amoonguss with the Population Bomb, and I'm kind of wishing that I'm Rocky Helmet at this point, but being Citrus Berry was fine too. It got us where we needed to get us to. We just close combat into Mousehold, and that's going to take it out in one hit, and now we just kind of need to get lucky with these sleep turns, as Indeedee has taken one turn of sleep, and the Annihilate has not taken any turns of sleep yet, so it's pretty reasonable to believe that Oranguru is going to be able to get up the Trick Room this turn, but Indeedee wakes up on its first turn, goes for the Focus Blast, but it thankfully does not KO Oranguru, and they also don't go for the Trick Room, and Indeedee is revealed to be Sash, as we have to Headlong Rush Annihilate in order to take it out, and it's going to live pretty well, and we go for the Bulldoze, because the entire game at this point is residing on Annihilate staying asleep for this next turn, and it does, so we're easily able to KO it, even though we gave it the Defiant boost there. Perhaps playing a little bit risky on that Headlong Rush, but the game would definitely still be over if Annihilate woke up anyways, because Oranguru doesn't really have the ability to touch Annihilate, and Hariyama has got its defense down so low from those so many close combats. Alright, here we have Heavy Starter Sun, as Charizard and Venusaur both benefit from the Sun, but it seems like they also have the option to go for the Colossal to perhaps proc its Sun boost on this team, and Gyarados with the attack drops is kinda annoying, but we can still take it out with most things on this team. Pachirisu Redirection kind of is annoying if they lead Gyarados. It means that we can't safely just Volt Switch the Gyarados with Rotom. So I decided to lead Minior and Hariyama here, as they decided to lead Torkoal and Venusaur, which this is good for us as long as the Venusaur is not Covert Cloak. So we fake out Venusaur, and we find out that it is not Covert Cloak, thankfully, as we get out the Shell Smash with Minior, and Torkoal is just going to go for the Heat Wave, which does miss Hariyama, but based on the damage that I did to Minior, I would say that the Heat Wave damage probably doesn't matter too much there. Venusaur is still faster because we're in Sun, we haven't activated our other form yet, but we get to Acrobatics into Venusaur as it just Sludge Bombs into Minior, and we resist it pretty good. His Headlong Rush is going to take out a lot of Torkoal's health, and we see how much the Heat Wave does there with our special defense drop, as Minior now gets to activate its shields down, and the opponent figures out that they can't really win the battle at this point now that Minior is set up, since I think everything that they have now is weak to Minior except for Pachirisu, but Pachirisu ain't handling Minior in any way, shape, or form. Here we have Firewater Grass and Rillaboom, Volcarona, Primarina, but they also have things like the Gengar for disruption, and they also have Gliscor Tyranitar mode for perhaps a really stally Sand Chip mode, but Minior is Rock type, so we don't really mind the Sand Chip mode too much here. So they lead Gengar and Rillaboom, and I decide to lead Minior and Hariyama as we get that immediate fake out pressure, and they fake out our Hariyama, which is fine. I faked out into Rillaboom anyways, but they actually have Taunt on Gengar, which means that we can't get our Shell Smash off, which puts us in a bit of a strange spot, as they just Shadow Ball into Minior, but they get a Spadef Drop, which means that it activates our White Herb here, and Rock Slide does a decent chip to both, but we do get a flinch on Rillaboom, which is pretty big here, as we get the free close combat into it, and Minior Shields Down activates, so now we're currently faster, but we're probably not faster than Gengar if it's max speed. I decided to go for the Wide Guard, hoping that they were going to Icy Wind with Gengar, but that's not what we see happen, unfortunately. So I wish what I would have done was I would have just decided to Headlong Rush into Gengar, as it currently has Chip from the Rock Slide, so it would not have lived that turn here. And here we get to bring out Gastrodon, and I swapped in the Amoonguss, as Gengar went for Sludge Bomb into Hariyama, even though he would have resisted it, and Volcarona Terra Dragons and goes for the Quiver Dance, but we get to put the Volcarona to sleep in a turn because of the Yawn. Now we can bring back in Hariyama, as they reveal Giga Drain into Gastrodon, which makes me wish that I had just protected with Gastrodon there. And Gengar Shadow Ball is going to do good damage into Hariyama, and we probably can't survive another one, but we can redirect with Amoonguss at least, as Volcarona takes its first sleep turn, and they taunt Amoonguss, so we're not going to be able to redirect the next attack that comes out. And they reveal they have Tyranitar in the back, so this is looking pretty winnable here, except the Volcarona gets the first turn to wake up and gets to just Heat Wave into both of our slots. So I think I could have played that game out better by more directly reading turn 1 that Gengar could have been a threat with the taunt by just clicking the Rock Slide into both slots instead of trying to go for the Shell Smash. Especially since Gengar ended up taunting Amoonguss, I think the fight would have been more winnable if I had Amoonguss around for longer, because we could... But also, if Volcarona stayed asleep for that last turn, I don't think Tyranitar would have been able to KO Hariyama, even with the defense drop for the close combat that we would use into Volcarona. I'm pretty sure that would knock out Volcarona with the Guts boost. So I feel like that one was definitely more on my play rather than the team itself. Here we have a lot of flying types in the Dragonite, the Talonflame, and the Pelipper, but they also have good supporting tools in the Mouse type, who can side hit into our Caledon in order to proc its defense boost with its stamina, and Pawmot just bringing things back from the dead can be a little intimidating here. They lead Talonflame and Dragonite, which is fine for me because we have Oranguru and Rotom, and we get to Volt Switch into the Talonflame since it was pretty unlikely for it to go for the Brave Bird into Oranguru or the Rotom Mow because Rotom resisted, and I thought they were going to just Flare Blitz into Rotom Mow, which they do, and Gastrodon takes damage, and the recoil takes out the Talonflame, and they also decide to Dragon Claw into the same slot and get the crit, and the crit is going to lower down Gastrodon's health to where it just barely survives the hit, thankfully, as our Caledon Terra Grass, and I yawned into Dragonite here, and then knocked it off, as I want to try and disable Dragonite so that we could use Hariyama in the back to deal with our Caledon better, and thankfully they do decide to take out the Gastrodon. Now we have Hariyama in here, but still needs a turn for its Flame Orb, so I just fake out into Mousehold, as our Caledon isn't too much of a threat right now since it hasn't gotten any defense boost, and it decided to Draco Meteor to lower its own special attack. Mousehold full on protects here, so we get the close combat into our Caledon, but it's not doing enough to KO it, as they get defense boost, and I tried taunting Mousehold in order to get rid of its redirection, but Oranguru is just going to take the hit here, and now it is Hariyama and Rotom against the world, as they swap in the Dragonite here, but we get the close combat into Dragonite, and that crits it back, so Dragonite crit us, but we got to crit it back, as the Population Bomb comes out into Mousehold, and fingers crossed that it misses here, but unfortunately it doesn't miss, which makes me think that it's wide lens, so I kind of wish that I just attacked into Mousehold that slot, but we Terra Ghost Hariyama so they can't hit us with the Population Bomb for our last turn, but they actually decide to attack with our Caledon here into side our Caledon, and at this point, like, if they crit our Caledon with the side Population Bomb, they very well, like, kill their own Arcaledon, so this is a bit of a crazy play for them to go for. But our Caledon actually lives on 1% for the max defense boost, but close combat is going to take out our Caledon because our Caledon misses the Draco Meteor, but I don't think the Draco Meteor would have KO'd Hariyama. It's hard to say if at half special defense if it would have. But the next beat up from Mousehold, even though it's just one beat up, probably would have finished us off if it wasn't for the Mousehold side targeting for that one turn. But because of our Ghost Terra, they're pretty much unable to hit us except for that one singular beat up on Hariyama, so Hariyama gets to take out Mousehold. So I do think this one was a bit of a mishap on the opponent for not taking advantage more of that original crit that we had on Gastrodon, because Gastrodon could have really afforded to put more Pokemon to sleep and put more pressure on the opponent, but because we had that opening crit that did so much damage to it, it was hard to use Gastrodon and Hariyama together, so we just kind of had to rely on a little bit of luck for Hariyama to get out of the game there. Lastly, we have a game against a person who's using a lot of defensive tools, really. They only really have the Gold Dango as offense, which makes me think that their Dragonite might be Choice Band. But we let the team go off here and we lead Minior and Hariyama, and they decide to lead Tyranitar and Dragonite, which I am perfectly fine with, as neither of these pieces really threaten Minior that much. They immediately swap into Amoonguss, but we get the fake out into that slot as they low kick with Dragonite, but we get off our Shell Smash with Minior, and that White Orb is going to take away our defense drops, as now we're pretty free to just acrobatics into the Amoonguss, which it directly redirects us into doing, and we're still in our shield form, so we take as much damage as we did from the low kick last time. And close combat's going to deal decent damage into Dragonite, but now Minior is going to be in its speedier form as they bring in Gastrodon, and I wanted to protect for this turn just to see if they would have extreme speed on Dragonite, but it seems like they don't, or their choice banded into low kick, which either works for me, and we get good close combat damage into the Gastrodon, who tried to yawn either Hariyama or Minior, but just didn't work. And I wide guard this turn and safely take out Dragonite. We could have gone for the Rock Slide, but I didn't want to risk it there, as wide guard catches the Muddy Water from Gastrodon, meaning that Minior is safe for another turn. We swap in Amoonguss here for Hariyama in order to get rid of those defense drops, and we just take the Acrobatics into Gastrodon, and a Terraflying Terra Blast into what was previously Hariyama, but Amoonguss takes it pretty good, and Minior Rock Slides the now Terraflying Tyranitar, which means that Minior picked up every single KO in this game, which is insane. So yeah, that was the Minior team. As you can see, it's really something that you have to respect in the team preview, because if Minior gets off that Shell Smash and you break its shields down, allowing it to outspeed even your really speedy components, you're just gonna get slapped around by Rock Slide and Acrobatics. There's just no other way around it. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.